Hi, this is Tom with the community team, and in this video tutorial we're going to take a look at how to set your firewall as a PPPoE or a DHCP client. When you're deploying a smaller device like a PA200 in a branch office or a home office, your ISP might not be able to provide you with a static connection, and you might need to resort to a cable or DSL alternative, which may not allow you to set a layer 3 interface with a static IP address. Instead, you may need to configure your external interface as a PPPoE client with an authentication profile, or as a DHCP client that receives an IP address from an upstream DHCP server. One tip: make sure to check with your ISP that they can provide you with a modem that allows bridging mode. This will make sure that the external IP address on your firewall is actually a public IP address instead of a private IP address behind yet another layer of NAT translation. Having a public IP address on your external interface will allow for a little more flexibility when you ever need to configure inbound or outbound services like an SMTP server or a web server, for example. If we go take a look at interfaces, interface 2 is not going to be used, so I'm going to take it out of the vWire, because else we're going to get an error message, and make it a simple layer 3 with no configuration. Then interface 1 is the one that's going to be connected to my ISP, so this one is the one we are going to be configuring. First, we change the interface type to layer 3. Then we need to assign it to a virtual router. Let's stick to the default one for now. We need to set it into a security zone. Right now I don't have any layer 3 zones configured yet, so let's create a new one. Then IPv4, typically here I would be setting my static IP address, but since we don't have one, we either choose the PPPoE option or the DHCP client. In PPPoE, you can simply set username and password provided by your provider. Make sure it's enabled. In the advanced tab, you'll see a couple of additional configuration options, like for example which type of authentication to use, and if you did get a static IP address from your ISP, you need to set it here, including its subnet mask. If your ISP requires an access concentrator and service, you can fill that out here. And if it's required, you can set your PPPoE client to passive, which means that the access concentrator is going to initiate your connection. We're going to be setting up DHCP client, which is a little easier. Just need to make sure it's enabled. And then you have the option to automatically create a default route pointing out to the internet. So if your ISP provides you with a default route, it can automatically be added to your virtual router. You don't need to take any action to have that added. Alternatively, you could disable this option and input your default gateway manually into your virtual router. Let's go ahead and click OK for this part of the configuration. And now my interface has been set as a DHCP client. Right now I haven't committed my configuration just yet, so if I click on this link, I'm going to get an error message. As soon as the commit pushes this configuration onto the data plane and onto the physical interface, it is going to start behaving like a DHCP client. The last thing I need to do before I can commit this change is go to the virtual wire and delete the default virtual wire we were using before. Now I can go ahead and commit. The virtual wire object needs to be deleted, because if you have a virtual wire configured, it requires 2 interfaces be assigned to it. Since I took out interfaces 1 and 2, it no longer had any interfaces. So if I would have committed without deleting the object, I would have gotten an error message stating that vWire was missing some interfaces. Now that this configuration has been committed, you can see that the interface is up. And if I now click the client information, I did receive an IP address, I received a gateway, and I received DNS information. From this view, I also have the possibility to renew or release the DHCP lease. So for example, if I release the current lease, DHCP information will be discarded. If I renew, I will get new information from the upstream DHCP server. The next thing we can do is configure interface 3 as my internal interface. So I'm going to set it as a layer 3 interface. I'm going to assign it to the same virtual router as interface 1. I'm going to give it its own internal zone. And then assign a static IP address to it. And now I can use all the information I got from my DHCP server, so the one provided by my ISP, to provide information down to my clients. So if I go and create a DHCP server object, which I bind to interface 3, which is my trust interface, I'm going to leave mode as auto. This is going to detect if a different DHCP server is active on my local network and disable this one if there is one. Next, I'm going to enable ping IP when allocating new IP address. This is going to make sure that if an IP address is assigned, a ping is sent out first to verify if the IP address is available. This is good to help prevent IP conflicts in case there is someone with a statically configured IP address on the network. Next, I'll configure the IP pools. And then for my options, I can select an inheritance source, which is going to be my external interface, which will allow me to forward any information I receive from my ISP DHCP server onto my client. So for example, DNS servers might be useful, so they get a localized DNS server per client. I still need to input the default gateway for my clients and its subnet mask. Plus I can make sure that the inheritance source is actually active. Let's go ahead and click OK. The last two things I need to do before I'm up and running is to create a security policy and a NAT policy. So in my NAT policy, let's create a new one. And we're going to go for a simple outbound NAT, so my users can surf. Source is going to be my trust zone. The destination zone is going to be my ISP interface. Translated packet, I'm going to simply do dynamic IP address and port. And I'm going to hide everything behind my DHCP interface. I don't need to set an IP address here because this is a DHCP interface. Simply going to hide everything behind the IP address assigned to interface 1. Next, security policy. The default security policy is still here. Let's go ahead and delete that. And let's create a new rule. Let's call it surf. The source is going to be my trust zone. The destination is going to be the untrust zone. In the applications, I'm going to add a couple of basic applications like DNS, web browsing, and SSL. In the services, I would recommend to always use application default. This is going to make sure that your applications only run on the expected ports, like 80 for web browsing, 443 for SSL, and 53 for DNS. In the actions, make sure to enable your security profiles. If you check out our YouTube channel, there's a video that explains some best practices in this regard. For now, I'm going to check only the defaults so we can get started. Let's go ahead and commit this. And now we're good to go. I hope you liked this tutorial. Please feel free to leave a comment below. If you like this kind of stuff, check out our YouTube channel and make sure to subscribe. More stuff coming up soon.